911, what's your emergency?
There's a woman, Zara Blake. She's been attacked by a leopard. It's dragging her into the trees.
Stay calm. Can you see where she is? What's happening right now?
I can't. She's not moving. The leopard's tearing at her.
Zara Blake, a passionate wildlife photographer, had dedicated her life to capturing the majestic beauty of nature. She stood on the edge of a secluded clearing, her camera poised to capture the elusive moment of connection. The leopard, once a playful companion, now lay in wait, its primal instincts emerging once more. Zara, unaware of the danger lurking so close, clicked the shutter just moments before the unthinkable happened. If you're captivated by Zara's story and the raw consequences of her bond with wild animals, make sure to subscribe, like, and share your thoughts below. Zara Blake was no stranger to the wild. From a young age, she had been captivated by the raw beauty of nature, and it wasn't long before she turned her passion into a career. As a wildlife photographer, Zara spent her days in remote corners of the world, capturing moments that many could only dream of witnessing. Her particular obsession was leopards elegant, powerful, and elusive. For years, Zara had dreamed of gaining the trust of these magnificent creatures, to not only photograph them from afar, but to be allowed into their world. Her early career had been marked by a relentless drive to build a bond with wild animals, something that set her apart from other photographers. She wasn't just interested in capturing their beauty, she wanted to understand them on a deeper, almost spiritual level. It wasn't long before she was drawn to one leopard in particular, a cub she had met in a sanctuary. Zara, who had spent years observing and photographing leopards from a distance, found herself drawn to this uneasy orphaned cub raised in captivity, who had never known the jungle. The leopard was, in many ways, the perfect candidate for the romanticized vision of a human-animal connection that Zara had always dreamed of. She would raise it herself, spending every day with the animal, training it, forming what she believed was a special bond that defied the typical laws of nature. To her, this leopard was not just an apex predator, but a partner, a companion. However, while Zara saw the leopard as a unique individual who was capable of transcending its wild instincts, the animal's biology was not so easily swayed. The leopard, named Nyoka, had been raised with human contact, its early experiences a blur of caretakers and cages, but as Nyoka grew, so did the latent instincts that were buried deep within her DNA. Zara, however, dismissed any warnings that came her way. Colleagues in the wildlife community, including animal behaviorists and biologists, cautioned her about the risks of keeping a wild animal, especially one so powerful. "It's not a pet, Zara," they would say. "No matter how much you believe it's different, Nyoka is still a leopard. Her instincts will return." Zara, however, was firm in her belief. She had spent years researching, understanding, and even anthropomorphizing Nyoka's behavior. She believed that love and trust could override the wildness that was inherently part of the animal. She frequently posted online, boasting of the remarkable bond she shared with the leopard. She would often share photos of Nyoka playing in the yard, resting beside her, or following commands like a trained dog, each post filled with awe and admiration. She built a public persona of herself as a daring conservationist who had bridged the gap between humans and one of the world's most dangerous animals. As Nyoka matured, however, her behavior became increasingly unpredictable. At first, Zara would brush it off small outbursts of aggression, a swipe at her hand, or an unexpected lunge. Zara convinced herself these were isolated incidents, nothing more than a fluke. But deep down, a part of her began to question if there was truth to the experts' warnings. She couldn't bring herself to believe it. She couldn't accept that her dream of a harmonious bond with a wild predator was slipping through her fingers. The leopard was her friend, her partner, and Zara refused to entertain the idea that nature's instincts could rise above her influence. The tension between Zara's growing confidence in her bond with Nyoka and the escalating signs of the leopard's true nature became an underlying current in their relationship. The leopard's wild instincts were waiting silent, patient, and inevitable. But Zara, blinded by her belief in the uniqueness of their connection, continued to ignore the increasingly obvious red flags, certain that she had the power to tame the untamable. As Zara's bond with Nyoka deepened, the world outside her bubble of confidence grew more concerned. Wildlife experts, including renowned biologists and seasoned animal trainers, began to take notice of Zara's increasingly public relationship with the leopard. The same professionals who had once celebrated her passion now found themselves voicing their growing unease. "You can't tame a wild animal like that." Dr. Dady, Sandra Harlow, a leading biologist with decades of experience in big cat behavior, warned during a televised interview, "Leopards, like all big cats, are predators by nature. No matter how much you bond with them, those instincts will resurface, especially as they mature." But Zara, stubborn and fiercely defensive of her connection to Nyoka, waved off these concerns as mere misunderstanding. "She's different," Zara would insist. "Nyoka trusts me. She's not like the others. I've raised her, and I know her better than anyone." Zara's belief in their unique connection blinded her to the dangers around her, dismissing any attempts by the experts to intervene. "You can't ignore the nature of the beast," one trainer had pleaded, trying to reason with her after witnessing a tense moment between Zara and Nyoka during a photo shoot. But Zara stood her ground, certain that her bond with the leopard was unbreakable, that love and care had transcended the wild instincts that all experts feared. Despite the growing chorus of concern, Zara remained unwavering in her belief that she was in control. It wasn't long before Nyoka's behavior began to shift. Flashbacks to earlier incidents now seemed eerily prescient. The first time Nyoka had swiped at Zara's hand, the trainers had insisted it was a warning sign. The second time, a sudden, unprovoked lunge toward her face was dismissed as a playful attack, something that Zara believed could be trained out of the animal. The third time, however, it wasn't so easy to ignore. During a quiet evening walk, Nyoka suddenly darted at a passing animal, her instincts flaring up uncontrollably. Zara struggled to pull her back, feeling the raw power of the leopard's strength, yet convinced that it was just a momentary lapse, nothing more. "She was just excited," Zara explained to a concerned friend. "She didn't mean it." As the months passed, the signs grew harder to dismiss. Nyoka had begun to show more overt aggression towards strangers, growling and snapping at anyone who entered her personal space. One day, a visiting friend was nearly bitten when she attempted to approach Nyoka while the leopard was resting. Zara, ever defensive, explained it away as an isolated incident, brushing off the warning with her usual retort, "She's protective, but she'll calm down." But deep down, even Zara couldn't ignore the rising tension in the air. The love she had poured into this wild creature had, perhaps, blinded her to the fact that Nyoka was no longer the docile cub she had once been. The predator that had been lying dormant within her was slowly awakening, but Zara couldn't bring herself to admit it. Each escalating warning from experts, each sign of danger from the leopard, only served to strengthen Zara's belief that they were exceptions, that the bond they shared could defy the rules of nature. She continued to share photos of their closeness, Nyoka sitting at her feet, lying beside her as if nothing was wrong. The romanticized image of a woman and a leopard, inseparable and trusting, was the narrative Zara clung to, even as the reality around her became impossible to ignore. In her heart, Zara believed that Nyoka would never harm her, and as the tension mounted, so did her blindness to the looming threat. The leopard's instincts would not be denied, and as the tension built to a breaking point, Zara's delusion of control over nature would come crashing down. As Nyoka matured, the physical changes in the leopard became undeniable. No longer a playful cub, she was a large, powerful predator, with muscles rippling beneath her sleek coat, her instincts sharpening with every passing day. The once subtle signs of aggression that Zara had brushed off as harmless became more frequent and violent, though Zara remained steadfast in her belief that their bond was unbreakable. One afternoon, while attempting to train Nyoka, Zara was caught off guard when the leopard suddenly lunged at her, the speed and force of the attack leaving Zara barely time to react. The strike wasn't an attempt to harm it, at least not in the way Zara perceived it, but rather a manifestation of Nyoka's primal instincts, a spontaneous burst of aggression that caught Zara by surprise. Despite the close call, Zara wrote it off as an isolated incident, convinced that it was merely a misunderstanding or an accident that would never happen again. In another instance, Nyoka began to mark her territory more aggressively, urinating on the property walls and hissing at anyone who came too close. Experts who had worked with big cats warned Zara that this was a clear sign of territorial behavior, a behavior that signified a shift from domesticated pet to a dangerous wild animal. They cautioned her that such actions were typical of a leopard in the wild, preparing for mating season or asserting dominance. Zara, however, dismissed these warnings with confidence, believing that Nyoka was simply adjusting to her surroundings. "She's just trying to establish her space, but she won't hurt anyone," Zara would argue, maintaining her unwavering optimism that her relationship with Nyoka made her different from the others. Wildlife professionals, who had been advising Zara for months, raised alarm bells about the growing unpredictability in Nyoka's behavior. Dr. Stephen Bauer, a renowned big cat specialist, told her bluntly, "You can't keep a predator like this and expect it to stay docile forever. You're playing with fire. One day, it won't just be a warning lunge, it will be a full attack." Zara, however, brushed off his comments, convinced that she was in control. "I know Nyoka better than anyone," she insisted. "She trusts me. She won't hurt me." But despite Zara's assurances, the signs of danger were mounting, and every warning went unheeded. Even as Nyoka's behavior grew more erratic, Zara clung to her belief that she could handle the leopard, that her unique bond would protect her from the very instincts that nature had hardwired into the animal. The tension between the reality of the situation and Zara's refusal to acknowledge the risk became more palpable with each passing day. It was a crisp, sun-dappled afternoon when Zara ventured into the familiar clearing in the forest with Nyoka at her side. The air was thick with the scent of pine and earth, the sound of birds flitting overhead the only noise disturbing the silence. Zara had been photographing Nyoka for hours, capturing the leopard in various poses, thinking to herself how serene everything felt. This was their routine. Zara, camera in hand, standing a few feet away from Nyoka, who in her mind had become nothing more than a companion. Today, though, was different. The air seemed heavier, the ground beneath Zara's boots softer, as though the forest itself was holding its breath. Zara lowered her camera briefly to look at Nyoka. The leopard was perfectly still, her golden eyes reflecting the dappled sunlight, her muscles tensed yet poised. Zara felt a deep sense of connection, convinced that this was proof of their unbreakable bond. As she focused her lens once again, she thought of the countless photos she had taken of Nyoka over the years, each shot reinforcing the idea that she had somehow tamed the wild. Zara had always told herself that no other photographer could boast such an intimate connection with a leopard. In that moment, it felt as if Nyoka understood her as much as she understood Nyoka. Zara snapped the shot, capturing Nyoka's powerful yet graceful posture in the frame, the leopard's gaze seemingly locked on her. The flash of the camera illuminated Nyoka's features for a brief moment, her eyes flickering with a spark of something wild and untamable. It was a picture-perfect moment, frozen in time, a culmination of Zara's belief that this bond had transcended the natural order. But as the flash of the camera faded, so did the illusion. In the split second after the photo was taken, Zara sensed a shift in the air. Nyoka's muscles rippled, her calm expression hardening into something else, something predatory. Zara felt the familiar warmth of confidence suddenly give way to an unsettling chill. She tried to brush it off, telling herself it was nothing. "She's just playful," she thought, even as her heart began to race. In the back of her mind, the experts' warnings lingered like ghosts, but she ignored them. In her eyes, this moment, this photograph, was the proof of her control over the situation. But in the wild, there are no rules, no bonds that can stop the surge of instinct when it strikes. Zara had no way of knowing it, but in that flash of light, her fate had already been sealed. The leopard's instincts were awakening, and Zara was too blinded by her own overconfidence to see the danger that loomed just beyond the camera's lens. The photo had barely left Zara's camera when the shift in Nyoka's demeanor became impossible to ignore. In an instant, the leopard's poised stance was replaced by a primal, explosive lunge. Zara's heart leapt into her throat as Nyoka's powerful form hurtled toward her, faster than she could react. There was no warning, no growl, no hiss. Just the sudden, visceral force of the leopard's muscular body slamming into her chest, sending Zara crashing to the ground beneath its weight. The air was ripped apart by the sound of Zara's scream, but it was swallowed by the ferocity of Nyoka's attack. Zara's hands shot out, desperately trying to grasp at anything to protect herself. She instinctively reached for Nyoka's face, hoping to block the oncoming assault, but the leopard's jaws closed around her arm, the pressure searing through her bones as Nyoka dragged her with a savage strength. The pain was blinding, but Zara could do little more than writhe beneath the animal's grip. Her body, though strong, was no match for the raw, untamable power of the leopard. The camera, still hanging from her neck, swung wildly, capturing nothing but the chaos unfolding in the blur of movement. Zara fought back, her limbs flailing in a futile attempt to free herself. She kicked, struck at Nyoka with her fists, but the leopard seemed impervious to her efforts. Its claws dug into Zara's skin, raking across her body with devastating force. She could hear the sickening sound of bone grinding beneath the pressure of Nyoka's jaws, each breath she took punctuated by searing agony. As the leopard's grip tightened, Zara's mind raced through fragmented thoughts, memories of their time together, of her belief that this was impossible. Her connection to Nyoka had meant nothing now. A horrific silence followed the initial chaos, only to be broken by the screams of a horrified bystander who had witnessed the attack. "Help! She's been attacked!" The voice, frantic and filled with terror, echoed through the trees, sparking the scramble for help. A neighbor who had been working nearby had heard Zara's scream and rushed toward the clearing. The man froze, his blood running cold at the sight before him. Zara, pinned beneath Nyoka, barely conscious, her body battered and bleeding. The witness dialed 911, his voice trembling as he reported the attack. In the distance, the sound of sirens began to grow louder, but in that moment, it was already too late. Zara, though alive, was at the mercy of Nyoka's violent instincts. The bond she had once believed was unbreakable had failed her, and the leopard's true nature had claimed its victim. As the sirens wailed closer, Zara's body was dragged further into the underbrush, her final moments unfolding in a blur of terror and disbelief. Zara's life hung in the balance as she was rushed to the hospital, her body barely clinging to consciousness. The paramedics worked frantically, trying to stabilize her, but the damage was overwhelming. Her arm, crushed by Nyoka's powerful jaws, was shattered, and the deep lacerations on her body bled relentlessly. Her breath came in shallow, desperate gasps, each one more labored than the last. The trauma was beyond repair, and despite the best efforts of the medical team, Zara succumbed to blunt force trauma within hours of the attack. The world she had worked so tirelessly to share, the bond she had believed would forever link her to the wild, came crashing down in an instant. The news of Zara's death spread quickly, sending shockwaves through the wildlife photography community and her legions of followers. To many, she had been a heroine advocate for the animals she loved, a pioneer who sought to bridge the gap between humans and wild creatures. But now, that same bond had proven deadly, and the heartbreak of her family, friends, and admirers was palpable. Her mother, who had always supported Zara's passion for animals, was devastated. She had warned her daughter countless times about the dangers of keeping such a powerful creature, but Zara had always reassured her, confident that Nyoka would never harm her. The tragic irony was not lost on those who had known her best. Zara's followers, many of whom had idolized her connection with the leopard, were left grappling with the loss, questioning the narrative of harmony she had cultivated for years. As for Nyoka, the leopard's fate was as uncertain as Zara's had been. Authorities were called to the scene, and the animal was tranquilized and captured without incident. There was little question about the leopard's instinctual behavior. It was the nature of wild animals to revert to their primal instincts when provoked or threatened. Still, the question remained, what should be done with Nyoka now? Wildlife advocates and experts found themselves at odds, caught in a moral and ethical debate. Some argued that the leopard, though dangerous, was a victim of captivity and could be rehabilitated and relocated to a sanctuary far from human interference. Others insisted that the animal's actions were an inevitable consequence of its captivity, and that Nyoka, like all wild creatures, should never have been kept in such an environment. The decision was made to put Nyoka down, though it was done with a heavy heart by the authorities. The ethical dilemma surrounding the fate of wild animals kept in captivity remained a hotly debated topic, as many questioned whether it was right to allow these magnificent creatures to live in such constrained conditions. In the end, Nyoka's life was extinguished, a tragic end for both animal and human, and a grim reminder of the dangers that arise when the lines between wild and tame become blurred. Experts in both animal behavior and psychology were quick to weigh in on the tragic events that led to Zara's death. Dr. Stephen Bauer, a leading biologist who specialized in big cat behavior, explained that Nyoka's actions were not a result of malice but rather a natural expression of wild instincts that had been suppressed, not eliminated. Leopards, like all wild animals, have deeply ingrained survival instincts, Dr. Bauer stated. No matter how domesticated they appear, those instincts will always surface when triggered. What happened to Zara is a tragic reminder that captivity does not erase the wild nature of these creatures. Psychologically, Zara's fatal misjudgment stemmed from a common phenomenon known as anthropomorphism, the tendency to attribute human characteristics and emotions to animals. Zara's deep emotional connection with Nyoka led her to believe that the leopard was more than just an animal. She convinced herself that their bond transcended the natural order, that Nyoka could be trusted to act like a pet rather than a predator. Dr. Emily Klein, a psychologist who studies human-animal interactions, explained Zara's bond with Nyoka was rooted in emotional attachment rather than a realistic understanding of the leopard's true nature. She saw the leopard as a companion, not a wild animal with unpredictable, instinct-driven behaviors. This blind spot, however well-intentioned, proved fatal. Zara failed to see Nyoka not as a pet but as a wild animal that, despite its domestication, could not be tamed or controlled indefinitely. The moral takeaway from Zara's story is stark and unforgiving. The nature of wild animals is not to be underestimated. Zara's belief that love and trust could override the leopard's primal instincts was tragically misplaced. Wild animals, no matter how seemingly gentle or domesticated, retain their natural behaviors and instincts, which can surface at any moment, often with deadly consequences. This cautionary tale serves as a stark reminder to anyone who believes they can tame the untamable. Respecting animals for what they are, wild and unpredictable, is not only crucial for human safety but also for the well-being of the animals themselves. Zara's tragic story underscores the importance of understanding and respecting the true nature of the creatures we interact with, reminding us that no amount of affection or trust can change the inherent instincts that define them.